So Honda. Most people think, yeah, Honda cars. We all know Honda cars. It's not Honda cars. It's Honda Motor Company. That's the name of their company. They started building gasoline engines. That's where they came from. Reliable, always starting, dependable, long-living gasoline engines. That's what they built. And eventually they said, well, why don't we build the whole car? But they started with the engine. And every person to the lowest man on the lowest woman on the assembly line knows they're a motor company and that's what they're about. And so someone can say, I've got a product idea. Why don't we move into this new area? And they understand the context and they're working. So Honda makes cars. Honda makes motorcycles. Honda also makes weed whackers. Honda's audience strategy, in our terms, is also driven by this. Honda's making a mid-price point, very reliable product. They're not making a cross-product brand play. They're not trying to say, you're going to be so impressed with your Honda car, you're going to buy the Honda Weed Whacker. They're going after weed whacker people on a value proposition, and they're going after car people on a value proposition. So their audience strategy and their product strategy is driven by this. And so Honda also makes lawnmowers. They don't make bicycles. Despite this man's attempt to fill his bicycle with gasoline, there's no engine. Nobody in Honda would ever propose or think or waste time experimenting and doing research on whether they should launch a bicycle. It doesn't fit with their fundamental purpose. Let's look at one more. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Now, these are not mission statements. This is not we drive shareholder value through customer satisfaction and compelling products that are crap that we could all say and apply to any single company and it wouldn't make any difference. These are fundamental to how they think and how their DNA works. So BMW is an experience company. They're a premium experience company. You're going to love driving this thing. That's what they're all about. And so they make cars. They're a little cooler than the Honda cars, a little more premium product, but they make cars. Why? Because you can have an ultimate driving experience. And they also make very cool motorcycles, which are absolutely an ultimate driving experience. And of course, they make bicycles. Why? Because you can have an ultimate driving experience on a bicycle. It's completely logical for them to go into that product. In addition to that, thereafter, their audience strategy is driven by this. It's a premium product. They want you to love the brand. They want you to have everything BMW in your entire life. When you buy a BMW, they send you a BMW pen on your one-year anniversary to celebrate the fact that you are now a one-year car owner. I mean, this is culture. And when you go into the BMW dealership, the motorcycles are there, the bicycles are there, the bags, all the other kind of stuff is there. They're trying to get you, one person, to buy everything BMW across all of your driving experiences. A very different strategy, all driven by a really clear fundamental why as to why they're there. They do not make lawnmowers, because despite this person's apparent glee, you cannot have an ultimate driving experience on a lawnmower. And no one in BMW would ever say, let's build a lawnmower. They don't spend any time on market research on lawnmowers. It doesn't fit their fundamental purpose. And we could go on. Why does Sharp make LCD TVs and not plasma screens? Why does Mercedes make trucks, big industrial trucks, and BMW doesn't? Would never think of it. Aren't Mercedes and BMW equivalent competitors? No, they're completely different companies. And a really important one, why did Sony, who had motion picture, music content, television content, consumer devices, networking, software, all in one corporation, fail to build the iPod and the iPad, and are soon to fail to build the iTV, which Apple is, I guarantee you, going to release soon, and it will be a very compelling product. Apple had none of this. They were only a computer company. They managed to pull all of the software, iTunes, and all the individual pieces apart and build a consumer product with none of the capabilities, and Sony to this day still can't compete. Why? Sony's a what company? I know Sony very well. Sony Corporation is a what company? They move into other markets. Yeah, there's a little bit of, well, maybe there's theoretically synergy, but it's mostly a revenue play. We got to grow. That looks like a business that grows. Let's get into that business. And each silo is run that way. And sometimes if something's declining, this is declining, let's find something that's growing. Apple works totally differently. They're driven by one common purpose. So back to the pig farmer. It's my premise, and again, I'm only 16 or 18 months into this industry, so I have no idea if this is true, but I'll bet you it is. 100 and some odd years ago, when Fictish Pig Farmer Magazine or Pig Farmer Trade Show or Pig Farmer Business Information Service was launched, somebody said, Bill, Claudia, you know more about pig farmers than anybody I've ever met. You should launch a magazine. In today's world, we'd say website. I can't believe what they said was, you know more about magazines than anybody I've ever met. You should launch one. Pick an audience, doesn't really matter. That's not how it started. It had to start because somebody knew and loved pig farmers. And it was the passion and the knowledge of that launched the product. But I think over time, we've all become product companies. We've become what companies? I'm an exhibition business. I'm a business information business. I'm a media company. And I think in today's world, if you were to apply the why, what, and how model, I would say this is about compelling interaction and market intelligence. And it used to be a long time ago that the most effective way to do that was a magazine or a trade show. Today's world, it's more complex to do that. But it's still the fundamental thing. How do I create compelling interaction and intelligence with that audience? And if that's what your goal is, if the center of your why, and I'm not saying it's only that, because your why is going to be much more specific, but it's got to be, in my mind, based in the customer. And if it is, then you step back and think, well, what are the ways, what are the products, what are the whats that I might use in order to accomplish that? Print, web, tablets, events, business information. But in addition, why not software? Why not e-commerce? Why not workflow? Why not education and training? Why not consulting? And along with that, there's an explosion of business models. Obviously, ad-supported, as Jack talked about, is going through an evolution. I believe he's right about that bifurcation into kind of mass media push and highly specialized, so accurate that it's almost entertainment, it's almost something you would pay for kind of advertising. But lead gen, digital-only paid content, combining subscription in digital and print in order to save your print magazines. Corporate licensing, membership, sponsorship, obviously attendance and exhibition in the exhibition space, e-commerce, but also software as a service, social media, et cetera. Marketing as a service. And so if you look at the four functions, the four kind of fundamental things of what we do, there is an evolution in this. R&D needs to be, in this world, about customer requirements. That's both upstream to the marketer and downstream to the audience. We had the same issue in music and motion picture. We had music artists and we had retail and consumers on one end, and you had to serve both audiences. I view the marketer as an audience also, but I fundamentally, as a customer also, but I fundamentally believe it starts with the readership audience, the audience you're trying to reach and gain knowledge about. And then product development becomes more product development and roadmaps and evolution of those. And marketing now has to handle product marketing and service marketing and brand marketing. Because if you think of the why, one of the complex issues in this is, what is my brand? Is it the magazine brand? Is it the online brand? The magazine brand didn't translate to online. Is it my corporate brand? Is it group brands? If you're clear on the why, my premise is the brand strategy follows it. It should be enforcing that. So if you're going to use an incredibly clever social media tool, marketing in a box, and that's viable to a whole bunch of different audiences, then that product is the brand because you're going to go across lots of different audiences. If you're going to be much more specialized in one particular area like Hanley Wood and you're going to move into audiences that are next door, concrete from construction, then you have a different branding strategy. But it's driven by that clarity of what your fundamental reason is. And then ultimately, selling obviously evolves into product and consultative selling, et cetera. So that's a bit generic, and I get that. So what are we supposed to do with this? Like I said, I'm not going to pretend I have the answer to what is your why. But I fundamentally think that the way that you figure it out, the way that we go through this process, is to ask the pig farmer. you ask your audience. You start with that. You go and say, okay, fictitious pig farmer, what are you dealing with? What's going on in your world? And he says, I've got commodity information, I've got hedging funds and all these issues, I've got legislation, factory farming is now under threat, I've got to completely change my model, I've got breeding issues, I've got genetic issues, I've got hormones that I've got to figure out, I've got advice on that, I've got this great social media access, but now I've got a new problem. I ask a question to my social media network and I get 3 different answers. I did X, I did Y, I did Z. Where's my voice of record? Where's the person that's helping me moderate this? Where's the brand that's giving me some quality? And how to face-to-face, I'm overwhelmed. I would argue that we tend to look at this and say, well, we're under threat because he has so many opportunities now. But think of your own selves in your own lives. Do you feel like you have an infinite number of opportunities now, or do you feel like you're overwhelmed with newsletters and conferences and information and access, and you are now having to be your own voice of record? You have to sort out your own world because you're overwhelmed with all the options. That, to me, is the opportunity here. Because, yes, all these new channels open up ways for us to be disintermediated, but they also create a demand for someone to come in and put order to some of the chaos. What do I want as a pig farmer? I want a strong, reliable market intelligence brand that gives me a voice of record that sits across as many of these as possible. And in the process, I want a voice too. That's one of the great things about the new world. So the audience gets a voice. So if we're going to do this, we have to let go of the reins. We have to be at the center of this universe, but it's not something we're going to control. But things like moderated social media solutions are absolutely, to me, in the realm of the whats of what we should be looking at. Trying to be at the center of what their audience's issues are. Then the other half of your whys, we can't do all of it. We're not Apple. We don't have the resources to just go out and build an iPod and an iPad and every other device known to man. We're not that. None of us are that large. The biggest B2B company in the world isn't that large. So we have to pick a narrower why, a really fundamental thing that defines what your business is about. So the other half of that, I think, is looking at your own capabilities, your own brand strength, your marketer relationships, skill sets, DNA. So if you think of the fundamental purpose is to create community out of that audience, and you've got someone who happens to have a strong love for social media or a strong love for some other product in there, you have an evangelist. It's a perfectly viable product. Let them run with it. And look at what your competition is doing. But I think if you ask yourselves the questions, what is the marketer, what does the audience really need across everything, not just our traditional businesses, but across that whole space, and where do I have the capability of creating a unique and compelling why that I can get my entire team focused on, I think you have something that's compelling and moves forward. And if you have that, then it becomes clear what products you're going to launch and what products you're not going to launch and what the obvious evolution of audience is. Now, again, I know this is a bit generic, so let me just for a moment talk about how this evolved in ABM. I'm a mini-me. I don't mean to compare myself to your businesses because I have a really, really simple life compared to the complexity you're all dealing with. But it's a similar business. I have a deep vertical business audience. I need to reach it through multiple channels. I've got way more than I can possibly execute on. I'm stuck at a certain size, and I've got to figure out how to do as much of this as possible. And I don't know where to start, and I can't be everything to everyone. And so the first thing that I did was I went out and talked to everyone. But for those of you who were part of that, I didn't come out and say, what should ABM do? I came out and said, what's going on in your business? Where are you going? What are the issues you're dealing with? What are the questions you're trying to answer? What are the evolution of the business models? Where do you think you're going? What are the things that you need? How do I get into your head and understand that? And I came back and said, wow, I've got a real problem. We're a small association, but everybody in this room is going different directions. Business information, events, paid content, lead gen. So I have an audience that needs me to cover everything in the entire B2B space at great depth, and I'm not big enough to do it. But I know that's why I'm here. I'm here to do that and protect and defend and promote it. And if I don't cover all of it, I have no reason for existence. See, I think strategy is not so much to tell you where you need to be in 10 years. Strategy for me is the ability to say, this is the direction we're going in, and when we come across the first hurdle, the natural human nature is to say, wow, this is tough. Maybe the strategy's wrong. Let's try this one.